Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I am back from Winter OR and can say I had a very productive and an awesome time. My goal with this trade show is to get one more sponsor for the podcast and then be done selling ads for the year. And if you listen to the ads in this show, you'll know that hasn't happened yet. And part of the reason is I'm very picky about the brands I'll work with. Some brands have offered me money, products I won't use like CBD, so I've passed on them. 6 sponsors is my limit. I have 5 right now, and when I get a new one, you will definitely know. But this last week was all about the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, or SIA, or I don't even know what to call it anymore. I head out to Denver on Tuesday night, land there at 8 p.m., and I got on a train and headed straight for Evo's Denver store and a party they were throwing. There I ran into Chris Ben Chetler, Roy Tuscany, Bryce Phillips, Jordan Sunshine, Jossie Wells, who told me he'd be on the podcast in the near future, and so many more. Thank you for the fun party, Evo, and thanks for having more to drink than just beer. I never really thought of people that don't drink at a party until I went to a party as a non-drinker. Kind of boring, like everything else sober, and the good news is that I won't be going to any more parties sober in 2020. I finished my sober January and made it right into February. It was amazing, but at this party, I was drinking a lot of soda water courtesy of Evo. I closed that party down. Then I got in a car with David Lesh and headed back to his warehouse. Now, if you don't know David, I'm not going to explain him too much. I've had him on the podcast before, and he says and does a lot of entertaining shit that some people love and moms and others really hate. Most recently, David made global news when he had to crash land his plane in San Francisco. He skipped it off the water and he lived to tell the tale. His passenger was a friend who was also a high school lifeguard, so she had experience treading water, and they were rescued after being in the water for over 40 minutes. A lot of people speculated that he could have done this to create publicity for the brand that he owns. Some news sources even cited my podcast, quoting me as saying that everything David does has something con man-esque to it, and this could have been a publicity stunt. While I didn't think it was a stunt, I had to ask David if he crashed his plane on purpose, and he said that was not the case at all. He did film video content because he could, but a lot of what went down in that plane wasn't insured, and he lost a lot of money that day. He also mentioned that he had about 20 more minutes of living before he would have succumbed to the cold water. So I go to Dave's warehouse, I decline a hot tub with him and his girlfriend, and then head to bed to get a little bit of sleep before the trade show. What's cool about this show is I get to meet a lot of people that I don't know at the brands I'm working with. And first up for me, it's 686. I've interviewed Patrick McCarthy. He's an awesome guy. And I know of Brent Sandor through emails, some calls, and stories from a lot of people telling me what a great dude he was and a wealth of knowledge he has. And these are people I really respect. So I know this is going to be a great meeting. I have a 30-minute meeting time, and it was good we put something on the schedule because 686 was one of the more busy booths at the trade show. My 30 minutes lasted longer than expected, and I left 686 so stoked on the history that the brand has. I mean, really, I want one of everything they make, but it's not really about me getting everything I want. It's about working with cool people, and I scored in that respect with 686. Next, I head over to a group of people I already know, Spy Optic. They were cool with my antics last year, so I knew they would be cool with me setting up my brand new stand-up banner at their booth. My wife designed this thing, and it is a photo of every person I've interviewed other than myself and Scott Chrisman. I had the boys at diecutstickers.com printed up, so thanks to Ans for designing it, thanks to Keith and Daniel for making it. Now that I had my branding up at the show, I was ready to kick it with Spy. I had spent a ton of time with them at the booth last year, and was drinking pretty heavily the whole time. But this year, they have a new goggle that has magnets and locks, and that kept them way too busy to talk to me. We had our meeting, and things are going great between us, but we didn't have too much time to hang out. Then I had lunch with Ben Weiss. I hadn't seen Ben in over 10 years, but we've been in touch. He's been on the podcast, and I only want the best for this guy. That said, when I saw him, it was surreal. I mean, Ben has been destroying his body and mind for a long time, and there were effects around that were noticeable. He still has some of that Ben Weiss rock star personality that I knew when he was younger, but things are definitely different now. And in pure Ben fashion, he walked up almost in tears as we hadn't seen each other in a long time, and he gave me the gift of a Coach passport holder. He wanted to buy me lunch, which I wouldn't allow, and I ended up buying his chips and soda, which was his lunch for that day. It was really good to see Ben, but a very strange 45-minute break from the trade show. I'll leave it at that. Then it was back over to the show and over to see Stanley. I see these guys a decent amount. Just like Evo, they're located right near my house, but seeing their full line at the trade show was incredible. They make so much stuff, and this whole show is all about products. And as far as products go, I can't say there was any game-changing technology that I witnessed. There were some new bindings that were interesting. The line trade show fixture that made the booties float was pretty cool. High Tech, a brand I don't know much about, they had the most incredible logo that was shooting a 3D hologram out into the air. I don't really know if it was a hologram, but it was the coolest thing that I saw by far at the trade show, and it was just POP. Every time I passed the High Tech booth, I would point at the logo, look at an employee, and say High Tech, but they really didn't think that dad joke was funny at all, and whatever. So as far as product goes, it was a battle of graphics. And when it's a year like that, it's always best to look down the snowboard aisle first for the art, and then head over to skis and see if it's going to be stripes or color blocking this year. It seems like ski is always chasing the snowboard world, and this year was no different. At the end of day one, I met up with Ryan Schmees and Adam Rohde. We had dinner at 10 Barrel Brewery, and then I headed back to David's house for some sleep. Day two was more of the same. A bunch of meetings. The strangest one was with a guy named Jim Miller from Respect Outside. I don't know what this organization is all about, but this Jim dude emailed me a while ago looking for a meeting at the show. And the meeting is going to talk about women in the outdoor industry and other things. I know this is important as we're going to be the two white dudes sitting down talking about women and what can be done for them in the outdoor space. So I realized we weren't going to make a huge difference, and earlier in the day I was going to send an email canceling this meeting. But then I realized you can't cancel a meeting about something like this. I mean, I already rescheduled with Jim a few times, but to cancel means I don't care about what women or gays or anyone in the industry is going through, and that is not the case. So I'm going to do this meeting. I meet with Jim in the public area, and we find some seats and start shooting the shit. He's telling me about the training his group is going to do and the movement that they have, and he looks at me and asks me to tell him about my movement. With no hesitation, I'm like, I believe in all the stuff you're saying, but my movement is really a poop joke. That's a play off my last name and a bowel movement. I can see the poop joke register in his eyes. And then I figured out a way to solve his problem. I let him know that if he killed everyone over 55 years of age, his problems with women and not having equality would be solved, as I feel like it's all people his age and older trying to figure out these problems when really it's a problem of ignorance, acceptance, and understanding. Our conversation then evolves from women in the outdoor space to the lack of minorities in the ski and snowboard community. Jim explains how it's on the brands and the sports to add marketing dollars to ensure that minority groups are being targeted and we get them out on the mountain. And when we look around this trade show, yeah, it is as white as it gets. But I had to shit on his idea here too. I let him know that I understand that this whole trade show is based around white people, but I don't think it's a discriminatory thing that we don't have other minorities here at the show for the most part. The lack of diversity within these sports has nothing to do with the brands or the marketers. Everyone wants to get new people into skiing and snowboarding. The reason we don't see minorities within the sport is based on the cost. And I'm not saying that minorities can't afford it, because they can. But for anybody to get into a new sport that they haven't done before, like skiing or snowboarding, there is a huge cost that is associated with it. Say you have a family of 4. The cost is going to be ridiculous for this new sport for you. You're going to pay $250, and this is on the low end, for your weekend rentals. You're going to ski for 2 days, snowboard for 2 days. For the family of 4, it's going to be at least $250. Then you look at lift tickets. That's going to be a minimum of $600. That's on the low end. Then you're going to have lessons, another minimum of $200. Then we'll say food and lodging costs is another $300, which is super cheap for any ski resort. So that's a minimum of $1,350 for 2 days of skiing for a family that is new to the sport. And if they like it, it gets a lot more expensive after that. I think the problem with skiing and snowboarding right now is the cost of every aspect of it. I think about how myself and most of the people I see at the trade show got into these sports, and it was because it was much more affordable when our parents were coming up, and they could easily take us to go skiing. But the price of all of this has quadrupled, and incomes have not quadrupled, so you need to be privileged to be able to ski. And I almost look at it as I'm doing a disservice to my son, teaching him to love skiing at such a young age, where he's going to have to pay for this addiction, per se, for the rest of his life. Because like a lot of us, he loves to be on snow, and it's probably something he's going to do. But it does cost an arm and a leg compared to most other sports out there. So, Jim, I know he wants to make a big difference out there. He's got a lot of ideas, and I'm behind him all. But I don't think the lack of diversity in skiing has to do with anything other than the cost of entry and the barrier to entry of the sport. Anyways, from there, I did a podcast with Alex Kaufman, who hosts the Wintery Mix podcast. It was fun being on the other side of the mic. Next up, Alex Kaufman took us all out to dinner for doing his podcast. Thanks, Alex. That was amazing. Then I headed back to David Lesch's house. The next thing I had to do was set my alarms. I had like 5 of them going. I had a super early flight back to Seattle, and I had to make it. My kid was in his school play. The school play was Shrek, and my kid's role was Shrek. So I had to be there, or I would be a terrible dad. Good thing is, I was sober all January and all trade show, which meant that waking up was easy. I'm able to get up, I get on my plane, I make it back to Seattle. I watch my son absolutely kill it for 3 sold-out 350-person shows, and then I celebrated with my first beer in 31 days, and then I celebrated with my second. It was a total proud dad weekend mixed with a trade show kind of week, and I'm relieved that it's all over. It's time for me to get back into podcasting because that's what I do. And my guest this week is a guy whose last name I pronounce differently almost every time I say it. It's Jake Blauvelt. I've been talking way too much to give you a normal intro into Jake, so I'm just going to jump into the podcast. Jake's a guy who's been doing it for a long time, has some great stories and a unique perspective on snowboarding. So let's now go talk to Jake. Get the kids down for nap?
Yeah, the little one's down, and actually my mom took the oldest one for the day, so yeah, we're cruising.
Nice. Well, I know we don't have a ton of time with this interview because you have 2 kids under 5.
Yeah, I appreciate you being conscious of the time, but no, it's all good, man. I've got a good hour or so.
Cool. I usually start with a bunch of small talk. I'm not going to do that based on time, but the only thing I will bring up is the X Games are on right now. Do you watch those?
I'd like to, but dude, I don't watch much of anything lately. There's just no time. I was supposed to watch all the movies and the Snowboarder magazine, like Pat Bridges sends out for Rider of the Year voting, but you have to watch all the movies, in order to vote for who you want to be Rider of the Year. And I just didn't have time to watch any movies this year. So to answer your question, no, I haven't been watching the X Games.
Do you just send Pat an email with who your Rider of the Year is, or do you just pull yourself out?
Normally I do, like in years previous, who I would like to see as Rider of the Year, yada, yada. But this year I just didn't even vote just because I didn't watch anything. I'm so out of the loop. I wish I was more a part of it. But when you're just friggin' wiping asses all the time and then you gotta sleep when they sleep, and yeah, I just, anyway. Yep, that's that.
Well, you only have like 3 more years of wiping asses. I know as a dad, for me, the one day my kid was like, I gotta poop, and I was like, go to the bathroom, and he did. It was like, I just won something.
Yeah, right. How old is yours?
He's 10.
Nice.
So it gets easier.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. We've got our oldest just turned 2 actually on Wednesday. And then our youngest is 4 months. So we're just, we're in the thick of it right now. We're kind of in the crux,
Yeah, there's not too many pro snowboarders with 2 kids under 5.
Yeah.
But we will get into your life and times and not talk about your kids anymore.
Cool. Yeah.
You were born and raised, I believe, in Waterbury, Vermont?
Yes. Waterbury Center, actually, to be totally correct. Yep.
Okay, and growing up, it sounds like you had a carpenter dad. Your mom was a painter. Is she like a house painter or like fine art painter?
A house painter. But that's actually her latest profession. But when I was growing up, she had a floral design business. And so she would do weddings and stuff like that. And also at our place where I grew up and where they still live, we had a bunch of tour gardens that she would maintain with employees. So tourists and people from the area could come and walk around these super manicured gardens in our backyard, see all the plants in their finest setting, and then they could go down to the greenhouse and retail area below and buy all of the plants that they could see in the tour gardens in potted plant form and bring them home. So that was kind of what she was doing when I was growing up.
Wow, it sounds like you could be in the zoo and people just walking through your property.
Good, I know. It was actually kind of annoying because people would just come at like 7 at night and be like, oh, we just want to see the flowers and we won't bug you. We won't buy anything. But it's like, no, this is our house. Like, go away.
So you have a sister as well. And I'm guessing from what it sounds like, you come from a middle-class family.
Yeah, I have 2 sisters, an older sister and a younger sister. And yeah, I consider us middle-class working family. Yep.
And one thing I hear about you, and I'm sure it has to do with your Vermont roots, is that you always travel with maple syrup. What's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I do. If I can fit it, sometimes I can't. But my dad makes maple syrup. He's got a small scale sugaring operation in their backwoods. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just my Vermont roots. I like to put it in my coffee, and anytime you need a sweetener, it's always look for the maple syrup. And I start off every day with a cup or 2 of coffee, and I like to put a little maple and cream in there, and it just kind of gets the day started, puts me out on the right foot,
Yeah, so your dad is Uncle Jemima.
Right, yeah. Better than that.
So you grew up close to the mountains and you get into cross-country skiing at an early age. And to me, that sounds like a ton of work as a kid. Yeah, you see nature and you can get a rush from getting your heart rate up. But while a lot of people I know are into exercise now, did that suck for you as a kid or were you into it?
No, I was into it. Yeah, honestly, I guess I just always saw my folks doing it growing up. And that was just like one of a couple things to do in the wintertime in order to just go out and have fun. And you don't think of it as exercise when you're younger. It's just kind of like something to do. And then, I did a couple races as well, cross-country races, and that was fun, kind of started my competitive nature. But it's just kind of like, especially in Vermont, that's just kind of a lot of what people do back here, I feel like. A lot more so than out west, I feel like.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you did team sports growing up. What were you best at?
I was best at soccer.
Did that get pretty serious for you?
Yeah, it did, actually. Yeah, I always played growing up, elementary and middle school. And then I managed to make like the varsity team freshman year. But then when I was a junior, I actually went out west. I did homeschooling. And then for the winter time, I was out west. So like my soccer coaches were super bummed that I wasn't going to be part of the high school team anymore. And there's a bit of controversy there, but I'm glad I stuck with snowboarding. And I still love to play soccer, but it's just not as competitive anymore.
Yeah, it always sucks when one of the better kids on the team leaves when you're a coach, I would think.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really think of it like that. But yeah, looking back on it, I could see how they were a little bit bummed. Yeah.
And skateboarding was pretty big for you growing up too. I think you get into that at like 8 or 9 and your dad's a carpenter. So you have your own mini ramp at home. And is that something that you do every day after school as well?
Yeah. Nice, man. You did your research. I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah. My folks were always super supportive of keeping busy, and my dad's a phenomenal carpenter. And so it was kind of like a project for us to do when I was like 11 or 12. And it was a really fun project to do together, to build something together. And we made it all out of pressure treated. And then we put masonite down first, and the masonite bubbled up within like a month of the Vermont weather,
Yeah.
And then we saved up and we finally got some skate light. And then the thing lasted for like 15 years.
Damn.
And actually my dad still has the skate light stashed away in his barn. But it was a super fun thing to do all my friends would come over, and it was this really quick tranny too. It was 4 foot tall, 16 feet wide, but the transitions were 6 foot trannies. So it was like real quick.
No time to think?
No time to think, definitely. Like 8-foot flat bottom, 6-foot tranny on a 4-foot tall ramp. So you had to be on your A game for sure. And I think it helped me be a better skater, definitely.
And at that time, too, around 11 or 12, you end up skiing. Like a lot of people, they start out with skiing, but you break your leg your first year skiing. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up. So it's during an after-school program that we would all go to Bolton Valley, which is a little local resort. Awesome, independently owned local resort just down the road. And I don't know how it really happened. I guess I was super rookie downhill skier and got twisted up and broke my upper part of my tibia. I ended up having to have a cast from like my crotch all the way down to my foot for like 3 months. And then another cast after that. It was pretty heavy, but in hindsight, I guess like it was good because then it stopped me from skiing, and I was already starting to dabble with skateboarding at that point. And so I switched on to snowboarding and fell in love with it. So I guess everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're a soccer player, a skateboarder, and then you are pretty much handicapped and can't do anything when you probably have more energy than anybody. That's got to be a tough thing.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. I had quite a few injuries when I was younger, like broken collarbone, broken leg, 2 broken legs. Actually, I also broke my fibula playing soccer freshman year. But anyway, yeah, I mean, knock on wood, I've been pretty fortunate. I think I finally learned how to fall, which is a big thing. I always tell kids, it's like, yeah, you got to learn your tricks and learn how to pop an ollie and all that. But it's like at the same time, you have to learn how to fall because there's no way you're not going to fall. And you want to make sure you can get back up and try again. And if you don't learn how to fall correctly, you're going to break yourself off and you won't be able to try again, you know? So that's like my niece and nephews. That's what I always tell them when they're learning to snowboard and skate. It's like before anything, like, yeah, work on your basics and learn how to fall. And it's funny, kids like, they kind of look at you like, what? But it's like, it's the truth, you know?
It's definitely going to happen and you better do it right.
Yeah, do it right. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's a nightmare for your family because I think the worst call you can get is, hey, we're at Bolton Valley and Jake is hurt.
Yeah, right. My mom was actually, she was one of the chaperones for the after school program. So she was there. She met me on the trail and yeah, it was a shit show. Nothing a parent wants to go through, but we made it. We're okay.
Yeah. You start getting into snowboarding, you grow up riding stow, and you're a weekend warrior, maybe with a night or so at the mountain or whatever, I'm not sure. But snowboarding's blowing up at that time. It's like the late 90s. And are you a total grom and know what's going on in both the skateboard and snowboard world, or do you not care about that stuff and just like to do the sports?
Yeah, I didn't care about it as much when I was getting into it. Like that was probably 95, 96, 96, 97, around there. And I was pretty oblivious to what was going on in the snowboard world. But I can remember I was a weekend warrior. And so I'd shred hard every weekend, all day. And then that Monday through Friday, I can just remember like looking out the window, watching it snow and just being like, all I want to do is get back on my board. And there was such a heavy froth. That's all I thought about going into it. And then when Resistance and True Life came out, that was probably like 98, 99. That's when I started to look to pro snowboarders. And then I was also looking to the local pros like Kyle Clancy, Colin Langlois. Those guys were from Stowe and they had moved out to Mammoth already, and seeing what they could do with their snowboarding. And my coach back in the day, it was just like a little, it was called Mount Mansfield Snowboard Club. And so it was Bud Keene.
He's like a legendary dude.
Yeah, he's a legendary dude. Exactly. And so he was the coach. He's from Stowe. He was the coach at the club. And it's like, I look back on it and just how fortunate I was to be with Bud. And then also a guy named Jenner, Richard, who I've actually started working with again on some other projects. But they were so influential and it was just such a good time. I just feel like I really hit it perfectly timing wise with the club and with my coaches there. There isn't quite a program like that now, you know, so I just feel really fortunate that I was part of that back then.
So you have that coaching, and with that, you're primed to compete in snowboarding. And at that time, I don't think snowboarding was as structured as it is today. I
Right.
don't think there was as many rules or regulations. And you're in the USASA series, the North Vermont ones. And
Right.
it sounds like you're on the podium every contest that you're at, which is no small feat. But the competition you were against is ridiculous. Who were the guys that you were competing against?
Well, yeah, I don't know how ridiculous it really was. Like, I mean,
Was it Scotty Lego and guys like that?
yeah, but they weren't part of the Northern Vermont series. I would see them every once in a while at like New England contest or nationals.
Okay.
But as far as like Northern Vermont series, like Lego and Pat Moore, they weren't part of that. I'd only see them like at nationals and whatnot. So the first contest I started doing, the USASA, like it was just awesome to be able to have that structure and get into competing and see if I liked it. And like right away, I started winning them. And I was like, oh, yeah, I like this. And my folks were like, whoa, maybe he's got something here. And same with the coaches. And then I managed to win like nationals. And then that's when my folks really started. They were always behind me and always super supportive. But then they were like, oh, wow, you can really do something with this. He's actually like really talented. And so yeah, it was really cool to have those coaches and have the structure of the USASA contest series, and then just realize that like, whoa, I actually stack up pretty well against the local competition.
Are you a competitive kid at that point? Like, do you go into those with like the winner take all mentality? And are you really bummed if you don't podium?
Yeah, for sure. Like I try and act like I'm not a competitive person, but I am. And it's the same with my wife, you know, it's like our kids would be so competitive. And I consider ourselves like pretty chill people, but at the same time, we're competitive and we can't help it. It's just in our nature. And I think like soccer probably started that. I can remember like when I was real young, like crying if we lost a soccer game in middle school, you know, and I just can't help it. I just want to win.
You were that kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I would say arguably the biggest contest other than nationals, which you won for a young up and coming kid, is the US Open Junior Jam.
Right.
In 2001, you end up winning that contest. What's that podium look like?
I think it was maybe Pat Moore and Michael Schwartz were on the podium with me, if I'm correct. But yeah, that was really cool, you know, because it's like you go down to southern Vermont and that's where like the whole snowboarding world comes to. It's like that one time a year when the Open was still in Vermont, and to be able to ride that big, awesome pipe the day after the main event, it was really cool to be a part of that. I can remember Bud. He put some Sarah F on my snowboard, you know, the Swix.
High fluorinated wax.
Fucking flying, man. Like going way too big and way too fast, but it helped and I won. Yeah. And then 3 years later, not in the pipe, but in the slope style, I managed to win the slope. And it was cool to be able to do like the junior jam and then the main event.
Yeah, I think when you won the main event, you might have beat Travis Rice, a guy a lot of people have heard of in that one.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. During a snowstorm. So that might have come into my advantage, but yeah, I'll take it.
I mean, he's from Jackson Hole. He should be able to ride in a snowstorm.
He should be able to too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you win the junior jam, that's got to create the idea that there's a future for me in this. Like, even if you already had it, when you win something at that level where a lot of people are watching, it's like, holy shit, my life can be around this. And is that when you start getting hooked up by Forum?
No, I was still riding for Burton then, just on like flow program. And then that allowed me to get on a flow program with the local Oakley rep as well. And yeah, you're right. It did open up some doors for sponsors at that point. Definitely.
And then Forum is the next one from Burton, I believe.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Dan McNamara, who was a Forum rep at the time when I was still on Burton, he ended up getting a promotion and moving to Southern California, getting a promotion for Forum. And he had passed along the good word to a lot of the Forum dudes that they wanted to offer me like an actual contract, you know, and I was only like 15 years old, I think, and like signing a contract, you know, and it was pretty cool and crazy at that point. But it was like, whoa, because being from Vermont, Burton is everything back here for snowboarding. And so it was kind of a pretty big leap of faith. And I had a lot of people from the Burton side telling me that I was throwing my career away already, you know, by going to Forum. But I think Forum actually really opened up a lot of doors for me. And I think I made the right move in the long run.
Now it is time for me to take a quick sponsor break, and my first sponsor is Evo, and they are a place I started shopping at way before they started supporting my podcast. Why? Because Evo does it all. Online, they have the best deals on the interwebs, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50, a low price guarantee, and the no-hassle return policy makes it easy to send things back if you have to. They also have stores in Seattle, Portland, Denver, Whistler, and I've been reading a whole lot about a Salt Lake City location in the works. In store, you are going to find all the brands, all the products, art, and a lot of passionate people who want to help you get dialed in for your next adventure. And for listening to the show, I've got a new deal from Evo for you on all Evo branded products, and everything they make is just as good or better than the big brand stuff. To get the deal, head on over to evo.com, shop the branded products. When you check out, enter the code POWEL20, that's all one word, and you'll save 20% on your Evo stuff. My next sponsor is Stanley, another iconic Seattle brand that has been ahead of the curve since 1913. While we all know Stanley for creating those iconic green bottles that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long, they still do that, and a whole lot more these days. They still are all about adventure, and they still are all about keeping your beverages hotter or colder than any other product ever created. Aside from being the leader in hot and cold, Stanley has always been the right choice when it comes to the planet. If you're still using single-use plastics for your beverages, it's time to make a change for the environment, and I'm going to make it easier than ever to do. Head on over to stanley-pmi.com, buy some stuff, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL, the number 30, all one word, and you're done. You'll get 30% off your entire order. My next sponsor is new to the show, but 686 has been a fixture in the world of snow and independently owned, which is a rarity these days, since 1992. When it comes to technical outerwear, 686 is known for pushing the boundaries of design and construction. The fit and function of my 686 gear is better than anything I've ever owned. And what I'm quickly learning is that 686 gloves are hands down the best, most durable gloves I've ever used. From their industry-leading pre-curve fit to the mobile phone-friendly Sound Touch forefinger and thumb, 686 has thought of all the details. But don't just take it from me. 686 gloves are the only thing you'll find on the hands of athletes like Forrest Bailey, Parker White, Sammy Lubke, Matt Belziel, and Olympic silver medalist Kyle Mack. And in 2020, 686 has added 3 more amazing riders to the glove mitt team: Hannah Beeman, Laurent Demartin, and Gigi Roof, who will be putting out a signature model. You can find 686 gloves and outerwear at 686.com and finer retailers around the globe. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. If you look at the Forum team back then, the Forum 8 and the Youngblood dudes that they had with you, I mean, Burton had some great dudes, but the hot shit in snowboarding was that Forum crew.
Exactly. Yeah. It was kind of untouchable as an East Coaster to be part of Forum. But then at the same time, Travis Kennedy, he was already getting hooked up by Forum. He was a couple of years older than me, but he came from Alaska to Vermont because his aunt and uncle lived in Stowe, Vermont. And so he came down here and was part of MMSC. We started riding together. I was still on Burton. He was on Forum. But it was like we all kind of looked up to Travis because he was like the sickest at the club. And then, that offer came and I could be a part of the team with Kennedy and be, kind of a part of the team with like Bjorn Linus and Peter Line and JP Walker. It's like it was all happening so fast, and it was really an honor to be on the Forum board.
They were full-on rock stars. And one thing that was cool, I think, with your early career is you went to Forum with Cole Barash and pretty much said, hey, I want to shoot with this guy. And not that you made his career because he's a super talented guy.
Right.
You created the path for one of your best friends as well, and he's blown up in snowboarding too.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. And I think Cole would have definitely found a way without me and Kennedy, but I think that it definitely helped. We were such tight friends, and Kennedy and I were filming together with Pat Moore. And it's like, we want to shoot with our boy Cole. And we got his foot in the door, but he would have gotten his foot in the door regardless. He's way too talented not to. And now I think he's kind of at the point where he's almost gotten too big for snowboarding, too talented. And he needs to move on a little bit. But he still loves, like, he's coming up for my event, my bank slalom next weekend. Then he's going to the Baker Banked. And we always try and get out for like one good shoot a year. Yeah, Cole's the man. I was actually just down at his wedding in Barbados. I was his best man, and he's one of my best friends. He's a great dude, super talented.
You have to go to baby duty for a second?
Nope, I don't. Not at all.
Okay, I just heard some crying.
No, yeah, my wife's got her.
So at 17 years old, I mean, you've got a contract and you're doing big things in snowboarding, but I think you're 17-ish, and you convince your parents to let you move to Mammoth. And how do you sell that one in? Because when you're a parent, I would think it'd be tough to let your kid just go somewhere, especially at that age. How did you convince them to let you do that?
Let's see. I guess I actually moved in with a host family, the Bealers, in Mammoth Lakes when I was 16. And that's when I started doing homeschool, and I had to quit the soccer team and all that. And then when I was 17, the following year, I had a good year with the host family. I got all my homework done and all that, and managed to do well in contests. And then, I don't know how. I think about that often. It's like, how the hell did my parents let me move into a 1-bedroom loft condo in Mammoth with 3 of my friends with no parental supervision for the whole winter? I need to ask them that, like, point blank. Like, how did that work, But I think that they just knew that I loved snowboarding and I might have had a future, and they were just the most supportive parents ever. And I think they kind of just took a leap of faith and they trusted me. And we had some fucking crazy times that winter, but we learned a lot. And, I'm alive and well now, and it all worked out, but really, I don't know. 'Cause like, I think about it having kids now, and I don't know what it's like to have teenagers, but I don't know if I'd let my 17-year-old teenager move 3,000 miles away and live with a bunch of friends for a winter. No supervision, so that's a really good question. I can't really answer that.
Mammoth back then was all about the unbound terrain park, I feel like. They also had a shit ton of snow, it seems like, every year. So is that when you start riding powder, or are you still just focused on the park and contests?
Yeah, I was starting to dabble with powder then, but it was mainly contests, Dew Tour, Grand Prix, stuff like that, and just like lapping the park. That's all we did was lap the park. We didn't even really spread or like go venture out. The mountain's sick. The Mammoth is amazing. There's so much terrain there, but we just shredded the park all the time, just working on our tricks and working on like contest runs and shit.
Around then's when you win the U.S. Open slope style, like we said.
Yeah.
And I think that's 2004. And when you win an event like that, does that put a whole lot more pressure on your shoulders from sponsors and everybody expecting you to always be on the podium?
Yeah, a little bit. But I knew at that point, like, I had won the Open that year. So I had been doing contests, since like USASA days. I had been doing contests for like 6 years at that point almost. But then, at that point, I did want to get into the powder more. And I was watching parts like Johan and Terrier especially, and Nicholas. I was watching those video parts, especially on natural terrain in the powder, and being like, damn, man, I want to do that. I don't really want to be on the hard pack anymore. Like, I still like park, but I want to give it a go on that. And so when I won the US Open, it allowed me to get in with a film crew, Defective Films and Sean Johnson. Yeah. And so that's when I started to film in powder and just have fucking vicious ragdolls. It was a heavy winter. I learned a lot, and it wasn't a great video part by any means, but that's just how I cut my teeth in the backcountry and started to learn how to ride powder and film it and do it in a safe manner, somewhat safe.
And when you're doing that, I mean, you're still doing some contests. I think you do the X Games a few years, and you don't really hit the podium there.
Right.
But are you just totally focused on powder at that point? And does contests kind of fall off, just like the training that you were doing?
Yeah, exactly. I just wasn't really like working on my tricks as much as just trying to learn and put all effort into a solid video part. And so that was my main focus. That was all I wanted to do, was just put out a sick video part. I wasn't really focused on the podium at all anymore. It was pretty much just like within a year, I just kind of took a complete 180 and like, I'm not really into contests anymore. But those first 2 or 3 video parts weren't that great really, because I was still learning how to ride a sled, and I was scared of avalanches. And backcountry riding, the hardest part is putting yourself in that situation where you can actually try your trick. And then it's like, you might not even land your trick after you spent all that effort just getting to the point where you can try it. You know? And so I was having a tough time putting out a good video part those first couple of years. And I heard through the grapevine that I was definitely like on the chopping block with Forum because I wasn't on the podium anymore and I wasn't putting out great video parts. I was definitely on the chopping block, but then luckily I pulled off a good video part with Forum or against him. And then that kind of gave me a little bit of a niche as a natural terrain rider. So that helped set me apart from a lot of people within snowboarding, I guess.
It's hard to separate yourself because there's only a couple different areas of snowboarding where you can be successful, it seems like, and you kind of carved your own path because there wasn't anybody doing that.
I mean, there were, but yeah, not as much and maybe not like my age.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
A lot of riders come up in the contest scene, they get some notoriety, and eventually they work themselves into filming. I feel like that's how it's done for most people.
Right.
But most people don't stop competing at 20 years old when you're on top of your game.
Right.
Did you feel like you were taking a huge risk at that point, or did you even think about it like that?
Yeah, I did. I knew it was pretty risky, but I just knew that I wasn't going to be stoked doing contests, and there was no longevity if I wasn't stoked. It's like you don't want to do contests because it didn't make sense to keep doing them because I wasn't happy. And what made me stoked and happy was riding in the powder, especially in powder, like natural terrain where I don't have to get a shovel out, you know? And so I just kind of took a blind leap of faith and like, this is what makes me happy. And luckily my folks had always supported being stoked, you know, that's what's going to give you longevity, and whatever you do is what you're happy with. And so I just kind of took a blind leap of faith, and luckily it worked out.
Yeah. Like you said, your Forum part really kind of legitimized you with the brand. And I don't know if it's this trip, but they send you up to Canada to shoot with Devun Walsh. And
Right.
What's it like hanging out with the Wildcats? And what do you learn from that crew as such a youngster?
Oh, man. It was crazy going up there because I'd kind of cut my teeth in the backcountry with Johnson and Defected Films and those guys down in Tahoe. And that was like, I was so wide-eyed and like there was so much to learn. And then I went up to Whistler, and I can remember driving up to Whistler with Cole and being like, dude, this is where like Devun and those guys, they filmed their whole video part in this one location, you know, and like we can do that. And then like getting to go out with Devun. And I can remember one of the first times I filmed with him, I kind of had like hiked into the middle of this pillow line because I saw this one like popper pillow towards the end. And then Devun gave me an awesome piece of advice. He's like, yo, man, why don't you like flow into that from the top and then hit the pillow? I was like, yeah, that's a really good idea, man. You know, and so like Devun was just super welcoming, very nice. And that was one of the points where he told me, but a lot of times I just watch him and how he could like sled out to things like crazy and then build a step down and stomp. And so it was more just like watching those guys, how good they move around in the terrain up there. Yeah, that was like a super influential year for me.
So you're like a sponge while you're there and learning as much as you can. But what are the travel days like with Forum? Because you're young and they are the rock stars in snowboarding. Mm-hmm. And while you're known for healthy living these days, what are some of the wild stories when you think back to your youth?
I guess like the crazy, I mean, it was just posting up in Whistler, and like we had a decent travel budget. So we ended up staying at like just hotels in downtown Whistler. And there were a lot of down days, you know, we'd normally only film like when it was sunny. Yeah. And so like there'd be like a week, if not 2 weeks in between film days where we're just like, yeah, we go ride the resort a little bit here and there. But then there's definitely a lot of nights at like Garfinkel's and freaking Savage Beagle and hanging out with like Mikey Renz and all those local dudes who know everybody. And it was just like, dude, we had the keys to the whole town right away. And I was like 19 or 20 at that point. And so I couldn't even drink legally down in the States. But meanwhile, like up in Canada, I can. And that was the fucking heyday, man. It was so cool to be a part of that now that I think of it.
I hear that the heyday of your partying life was when you were able to legally drink and you're in South America and you turned 21. What happens that day?
Dude, that's funny. Yeah, man. That was a forum trip. Who was that with? I think it was with Jake Welsh and Eddie Wall. We were doing an editorial. We were flying heli down out of Valle, Nevada. We were staying in Ferriones. And yeah, it was my 21st birthday, August 22nd. And dude, we got into the Pisco Sour like crazy and stuff so sugary. And I had way too much. Got alcohol poisoning, basically. I was hungover for 2 days.
Whoa.
You know, like at 21, it's like you shouldn't even be hungover for like a couple hours.
Well, I think if you do it right, you're hungover for 2 days. If your friends do it right for you.
Right, exactly. And so, yeah, I was in like a foreign country in South America, riding powder, getting to be in a heli with like my heroes like Eddie and, you know, on the forum team. It's like, fuck yeah, we're going to send it tonight. And that was a funny time. And there's definitely pictures to show for that.
I'm sure you're proud of all of them.
Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah.
So you do the forum thing for a while and you film with them a bunch, but it's pretty much you're a rider with them and that's it. They're going to tell you what to do. You're going to do it. And that's how your career is looking. Does it get to the point where you want to do more? You want to create projects and have input on the products and you need to go somewhere else to grow?
Yeah. It was like that. You know, like I am super into product development. I love being able to help develop better product. Like it helps give me confidence in my riding when I know how a board's going to initiate a turn or the binding or boot flex, you know, all that. Like I really enjoy it. And so I had kind of noticed when Burton took over, especially, there was no rider driven feedback and the product was definitely going in the wrong direction. It wasn't getting more quality. There's definitely less quality within the product. And it just kind of seemed like Burton wasn't putting the effort into the team or the product on the forum side.
You guys were the stepchild and they were going to steal your channel.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like. And so I was like, I don't know, man. It just didn't feel right. And so that was around the point when I quit forum. I quit the agent I was working with. Actually, that's a funny story. So that happened, it was sometime in the fall, I believe, ramping up for the season. And I knew that it was a sinking ship with Forum. I had to get out of there. And same with my agent. It just wasn't working out because he was too tied in with the Forum deal and he knew the Forum team manager. There was a conflict of interest with my agent I was working with and then also with Forum. I just wasn't stoked. And so I booked a ticket with my sister actually down to Costa Rica. On my layover down to Costa Rica, I hit up my agent and Forum and I just told them that I wanted out. And then I went to Costa Rica and turned my phone off for like 3 weeks. And that was probably the best move I have made in my career.
And then do you start creating all the contracts from there? Or do you act as your own agent?
No, that was when I started talking with Friday Management Company, and they also run a production company as well.
Okay.
So it was a cool situation with Greg Martin from Friday where they could help work new deals for me. Like the first deal I signed was head to toe with Oakley, and then they could also help facilitate a production deal at the same time. You could think of it two ways. Like there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, but it worked out really well in my benefit in the long run. And I still work with Friday to this day. They've really helped me a lot make the right moves and push my own content. To answer your question, it's like Greg from Friday really helped drill it into my brain that you need to be pushing out your own content. You can't just be a part of the team if you want to set yourself aside. And so that's when I started putting out like the Naturally webisodes, which like webisodes back then weren't that big of a thing, you know, like because the internet still wasn't, like not everyone was on their iPhones. And we were one of the first ones to do webisodes. And then we did a TV show and then we did the movie. And so, yeah, that was all from Friday.
It's time for me to take my last sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Spy Optic. For 25 years, Spy has been making the best sunglasses and goggles on the market. Yeah, there's a lot of good products out there, but no other lens on the market comes close to Spy's contrast and mood-enhancing Happy Lens. Don't believe me? Next time you're at the shop, try a bunch of goggles on, and then put on a pair of Spies. You'll see the difference. Another thing you can see is how much better Spy goggles look compared to the competition. I keep thinking the other brands will catch up in fit and finish, but they don't. For listening to the show, I'm going to make it easier than ever for you to rock a pair of Spy goggles, sunglasses, whatever. All you need to do is go to spyoptic.com, do your shopping, and when you check out, use the code POWEL20, that's all one word, and you'll get 20% off your order. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing my favorite Northwest beer since 2006, and since they started brewing beer, they've been supporting the sports we love. If you aren't sure about what 10 Barrel's been doing in the action sports space, well, I'll tell you. This year, they produced a ski movie with Lucas Walks called Watch This. They produced a snowboard movie with Curtis Cizik called Hold My Beer. They have signature beers that donate to causes like Protect Our Winters, and they have the dates ready for this year's Hella Big Air events, which are a party on the snow and have some big prize money for the riders. The first event is at Copper on March 2nd. Next up, it's Bachelor March 28th. And everything closes out with a new stop at Mount Hood Meadows on April 18th. If all of that isn't cool enough, the people at 10 Barrel, they're all skiers, snowboarders, and bikers. So next time you head to the store, buy some 10 Barrel and support the brand that really makes a difference in the sports we love. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. We'll gloss over your sponsors real quick. You have like the best sponsors in the game. You've got Ride, which you've been with for quite a while now. You're on Adidas, which you're like one of their first riders, but it can be scary getting in with a shoe company when you look at Nike pulling in and pulling out all the time.
Right.
But Adidas is stuck by you in snowboarding, and that's been cool. You get signature shoes. You have the North Face. You have Smith. You have the best sponsors you can possibly have, which is probably why, I don't know if you still have a house in Washington, but you have a house in Vermont as well. And I think snowboarding money-wise has been great for you. And it's all about having the right agent and getting the right sponsors, and you have them.
Yeah, definitely. I feel very fortunate, man. Like also with Darn Tough, that's like my 5th sponsor here in Vermont. Darn Tough Socks. Have you heard of them?
I have a pair, and they are supposed to be the best socks in the world. To me, socks are socks, but if you ride for them, they're the best socks in the world.
Lifetime warranty. Yes, exactly. But yeah, man. I feel very fortunate to be able to pay my bills through snowboarding. And I think my parents kind of saw that from when I signed that first Forum contract. It was like, wow, well, Jake's already making better money than us, which isn't saying much because he's a carpenter and a painter. But it's like that's when they really loosened the reins and were like, okay, you can do your thing. You don't have to go to college. Like, just keep paying the bills and making the right moves and doing the right thing, be a good person.
And I would think a rider like you would be approached by an energy drink sponsor at some point. And in my opinion, while I don't drink them, they are the best in terms of income, and they allow a rider to do whatever they really want to do. Do you ever get approached by any, and why don't you jump on that bandwagon?
I used to when I was younger, and I think I just kind of put the vibe out that I'm not an energy drink rider. I finally realized that like I am a role model to kids, and I don't want to push Monster or Rockstar or Red Bull, any of that stuff. That stuff's horrible for you. It's all sugar and it doesn't make you ride better. Like what's going to make you ride better is eating like healthy food and drinking water. So like I'm trying to do by example, I guess. And yeah, it's just as easy as that.
Do you ever look at dudes that are sponsored by some of those brands that have an image and have a personality that they don't drink those products and kind of just shake your head?
No, I don't hate on them. I realize like, sometimes that's the only way they're going to be able to pay their bills and still snowboard. And so that's their decision to make. And it's not like a right or wrong decision. It's just, the decision that they made. And it's not for me, but that's all right for them because it's going to allow them to snowboard and keep pushing snowboarding. And so it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, those brands create a lot of careers and let a lot of people do a lot of things.
They do, yeah.
But the way your career is set up now with Ride and all the brands that are supporting you, there are no expectations of results at all. They want great video parts that'll blow minds, and they want to build your brand, theirs, and sell pro models. And while there are no expectations for you, there's still like a ton of pressure to produce. Yeah. And what's the difference between contest pressure and filming pressure?
The difference between the contest and filming pressure is like filming is kind of all year, not all year, but all winter long. You're chasing snow all the time. And if you want to put out the best video part you can, rider of the year, video part of the year style, you got to be chasing snow all the time. And so it's not like a set schedule at all. It's just like, okay, it's good in Japan. Let's go. get last minute tickets, or like Europe's good, it's fire and go. So it's just, you got to kind of like go wherever's good, as opposed to, I know I'm going to go to the US Open this date and then we're going to go to that contest. And so I'd say that's the main difference, is just you're just following the weather. You're stressing about weather all the time. And then hopefully, you see the spot's good, you get a ticket there. Hopefully the weather holds and you can pull it off. I'd say that's the main difference.
But how about a project like Naturally, where I think in the beginning of the project, you have a pinched nerve in your back and that keeps you out for like 6 to 8 weeks. Then towards the end of that first year, and it's supposed to be a 1-year project, but towards the end of the year, you end up having like a really complicated shoulder issue and you have to have that fixed, and you don't have anything done in year 1. It becomes a 2-year project. And when you get into year 2, is it just like, holy shit, I've got to get this done or I am screwed?
Yeah, it was. Definitely, it was like that. I had a dislocated shoulder. It kept popping out on me. Like it popped out 3 times while filming. My confidence really started going down, because if I was like in the middle of a gnarly line or something and my shoulder came out, it could be really dangerous. And so it started messing with my head. And so I got surgery after that first year. It was a 9-month recovery time. I didn't get back on my board till December, I think, the second year. But in that recovery time, I had a lot of time to kind of get my head back on straight and really put things in perspective and realize, that like I'm super fortunate at what I do and I need to take care of my body. And so I got in with a trainer, started working out really hard, and that really helped. That second year was like the best year I had ever had. And I think it was due to the fact that I had that injury prior, and, I could learn something from that injury. Like I had to fix my shoulder because I fucked it up. I fixed it. I got surgery. And then I got ridiculously strong so that I could take those bails. And I think that I was a better rider for it when that injury was all said and done. So it all happened for a reason once again.
Yeah. And with that project, you have some legendary dudes in there. You've got John, Eric, Kazu, Terrier.
Yeah.
And you get them to commit their time for that first year. And is it just like a disheartening phone call when you have to be like, hey, man, it's kind of off for now?
Yeah, no, they all jived with it. They're good, that really wasn't an issue at all. Like those guys are all so chill, and they knew we were going to put the movie out eventually. So it's all good. There's no problem there.
The movie comes out, it wins awards, I believe. I'm not sure what awards, but is that a relief for you when it's done? Like, we actually got this done. It took a year longer than I wanted to, but it's exactly what I promised everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've actually put out a video part where I've been like, oh, dude, that was the one. Like, you're always wanting more and like, fuck, I should have done that better, But it was a relief. Putting out your own project, it's a lot of pressure. And so the years after, I started doing like the Snowboarder movies and just being a part of the film crew, and letting someone else dictate distribution and how your part is going to lie within the film. And no disrespect to any of those other film companies, but it wasn't working for me because actually, like, I felt like I was putting out still better and better video parts, but no one was seeing them. And then there was a lot of footage that wasn't being used at the same time. And so I think that I actually fucking shot myself in the foot the years after, naturally, because I didn't want to produce another one of my movies right after just putting a movie out, because it was just too stressful at that point where I was at. I just wanted to snowboard and not think about production or any of that. But in hindsight, it's like, it is worth it because people actually see it. You get to put in all of the footage. It doesn't have to get whittled down to a 3-minute video part. And so it's like the pressure and the stress is worth it for me.
I can imagine that it's frustrating you when you see the final edit and you're like, whoa, you didn't put that trick in. You didn't put that trick in. I thought those were awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, why didn't you show that slash after I landed the trick? Yeah, it's funny. And then at the same time, I think that there was a lot of confusion after Naturally came out, those years after. This was probably like 5, 6, 7 years ago when these other video parts were coming out, where there's so many videos and everything's online. And I think just a lot of people didn't see those videos. They just didn't see them. And then my part within that video wasn't what it should have been. But I mean, I really thought that like I had some of my best footage and it just wasn't put together right. And so it was like definitely a big learning experience for me. Like if you want to do it right, you got to do it yourself.
Yeah. And back to the injury, I mean, not really the injury or the surgery, but you learn a lot when you get hurt that one year. And I hear when you travel a lot now, you travel with a crazy amount of equipment to keep limber. What do you bring on the road with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not too much. I can fit it all in my board bag pretty easily, but I always bring like a yoga pad just because it's the easiest way for me to stretch. And then what else? I bring a lacrosse ball for grinding out like my glutes and whatnot, and then a foam roller for IT band. So those are like the three necessities right there. And then also these last couple of years, I've been super into rubber bands. So whether it be like a rubber band you can jam in the door and use for shoulder stability, just doing super basic shoulder stability exercises. And then also I've noticed lately I've been having kind of like a little bit of hip impingement, hip problems. Therefore, I use this glute rubber band. It's basically like a rubber band. You put it around your ankles and then you do all these glute exercises. And when I can get my glutes really strong and firing correctly, it stabilizes my hip and I can ride so much better. And so it's like, if I can just have these couple key things that keep me primed and tuned, I ride the way I want to ride and it doesn't hurt. So like, I don't like working out by any means or like doing these exercises, but when they allow me to ride the way I want to without any pain, it's fully worth it. And it's like, that's one of the main job parts of my job is body maintenance, whether it be like eating healthy food or actually like working out with even like a trainer. Sometimes it's like, it could be a lot worse if that's like what you qualify as the job part of your job is like staying healthy, you know?
You're a pro athlete, man. That sounds like athlete type stuff for sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I've looked at it.
And then eating healthy is tough on the road. I'm sure wherever you go, the team manager is buying Pringles and Doritos.
No doubt.
Do you go out and just buy your own shit and cook for yourself?
Yeah. Oftentimes I try and take like the eating schedule into my own hands and always try and like get a place with at least like a little kitchenette, if not a full kitchen, so that you can cook your own food. And I'm not like a great cook by any means. My wife's a holistic chef, actually. So she cooks up gnarly good meals and I learn a lot from her. And she supports me like insanely in that respect. But I know how to feed myself, which I think is like kind of a dying breed as the years go on, is like people don't actually know how to feed themselves, which is kind of crazy, but it's true.
And it's a challenge when you're on the road, especially going like restaurant to restaurant and stuff like that.
Yeah, restaurants are horrible, man. Like, unless it's like known for their health, but like a restaurant doesn't care about the health of their food. They just want to make sure that it tastes good so you'll come back. So they put in gnarly oils and all that shit, you know, that's not good for you. So yeah, I mean, Terrier's always stressed that too. Nicholas, those guys, it's like, I think that people just don't make the connection that what you put in your body really does have an effect on how you feel both mentally and physically. I realize that, and I have realized that for quite a few years now, and I think it's really helped to give me some longevity.
When was the last time you had fast food?
Dude, that's so funny you ask that because I just got in. I flew back from BC the other night. My flight was delayed, so I landed in Montreal at like 2:30 in the morning, and then I just had to get back to the girls, so I just booked it back. I pulled an all-nighter. I got in at 5:30, but along the way, I had to stop. I got a Dunkin' Donuts coffee and a fucking breakfast sandwich from Dunkin' Donuts.
And do you feel terrible afterwards?
Yeah, man. My stomach was all torn up the whole next day. But it was like I needed some substance in my stomach. And that was the only thing that was open at 3:30 in the morning in northern Vermont. It was a gas station Dunkin' Donuts. But before that, I swear, like it had been years. But it's funny you ask that because it was just last week that I had fucking Dunkin' Donuts.
Good timing. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but what I do have is I close the show out with something that I call inappropriate questions. And I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions that hopefully you won't like. Actually, it doesn't matter if you like them or not. You don't have to answer them. Who knows? But I was able to get an absolute legend, a dude that you started your career on his brand Peter line to come up with 3 questions for you.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to fire Peter's first question off right now.
That is too funny. Okay, great, man. Awesome.
All right, Jake. When you're riding down, not being filmed, and you do powder slashes, do you ham it up for the camera when you're actually being filmed doing a powder slash? Like you're acting, like you're getting into it a little bit more? Like say you're an actor who's pretending they're a snowboarder, and so they watch some snowboard films and exaggerate their arms up in the air and like do this super slash, and then like come out of it like your hands down, like it's like no big deal. You do it every day, and like check it out, bro. Just do a slash, no big deal. Is that how you do your slashes? What's going through your head like that?
That is so good, man. I love hearing Pete's voice. Dude, that is so funny. Okay, to answer Peter's question, I guess it sometimes it depends on how many frames per second the filmer is filming. You know, sometimes if you know that it is super slow-mo, it does kind of look better if you do throw your hands up a little bit and ham it, you know? So I always try and just ride the same. But with that being said, sometimes, you know, if it is a super slow-mo, real deep, nice, light snow, and I'm coming right for the camera, I might ham it up like a good 50% more for sure.
So a little snowboard acting.
Yeah, there's a little bit of acting in there, no doubt. Yeah.
All right, we will jump into question number 2.
Okay.
Question number 2. I believe it was in Vacation or one of those old forum videos. You had some claim about you getting into backcountry, and if you have to build a jump off of a kicker, you're not going to hit it or something like that. Sounded kind of cocky and arrogant to me because, you know, like you can see like a perfect jump and like, oh, you know, I could do like a back double cork 10 off of that. But if it's going through Jake's head, like, I don't even want to build a kicker to do that. The kicker might not have enough kick off of it, and then you can only do a back 7. Is that just me making excuses for not doing the back double cork 10 because you don't want to take the time to put a little bit of a lip on that kicker?
Oh, too good, man. Well, first, let me start by saying I think that was the interview for Forum or Against Them. And I was probably like 21, 22 years old, maybe a little cocky and arrogant and didn't know how to conduct a proper interview. And so that interview was horrible and they used everything from it. Let's see, to answer the question, yeah, that was just at the time when I'd so much rather just do like 100 slashes as opposed to building a jump all day and then not even being sure if you're going to land a trick. And so I was just more into quantity than quality at that point and watching natural terrain video parts from like Johan and Terrier, and I just wanted to be like them. And so I was just more about the slash than the air at that point, I guess, to make a long story short.
And you've saved yourself a ton of work in shoveling and building jumps because it's not like those things happen in an hour. I mean, it's something that's usually like a day build at least, and then you come back the next day to get it.
Right, exactly. And I was just like, dude, I don't know. It just wasn't jiving with me. I was just into riding my snowboard more instead of shoveling. Like I thought that was what pro snowboarders did. You know, it was ride their snowboard and not shovel. Yeah.
All right, we'll go with his final inappropriate question.
Okay.
Number 3. You around this winter so we can get stoned and watch Super Troopers 3?
What was the question?
He was wondering if you were around this winter so you can get stoned and watch Super Troopers 3, and I believe there's a story behind that.
If I'm around this winter?
I think he was pretty much saying, hey, I smoked weed with Jake in a hotel room and we watched Super Troopers 1 at some point. Do you remember that? And will you be around this winter to watch Super Troopers 3?
I think I remember. Yeah, I do remember that time when I was sharing a room in SoCal with Pete. And I was like, holy shit, man, I'm sharing a room with the legend, Peter Line. This is crazy. We rolled one up. And then we ended up watching Super Troopers. And then there's the whole Vermont connection. And he thought that was so funny. And Peter, I love you, man. Let's roll up another one and watch Super Troopers 3 for sure. That would make my day.
All right, you heard it there, and I want to thank you for your time. I know your time is limited, but your career has been amazing. You kind of did something that most people don't do at such a young age and just quit the contest scene that you're dominating and decide that you're going to head into the backcountry, and then you have to figure all that out, which takes a couple years, and you've rose to the top of the game in that world, and you've done it without having to build huge jumps and do like the most insane, crazy tricks in the world. You've just done it with style and done it your way, and not too many people can say they do that, and it's always cool to see.
Nice. Thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it, man. That was a great interview. That was super easy. The best I've done, I think. So I appreciate it. Great questions.
So that was time with Jake Blauvelt, and that dude has his shit together. His parents did something right, as he left home at an early age and was on his own where there were no rules, but there were also no really bad decisions made that I uncovered. I normally would have a longer outro here, but I can't remember this interview that much. I did it a few weeks ago, and other than remembering that he was a good dude who experienced a lot, doesn't like building jumps, has a ton of history with Forum, and then with Ride, he's really a guy that doesn't rock the boat too much. He's a smart older pro who keeps killing it. That's the podcast for this week. I want to thank you for listening, and after listening to my intro again just a minute ago, I really make myself sound like an alcoholic. So I should clarify that while I do enjoy drinking, I don't do it that often. But when I do, I'm purely a binge drinker, and I like to binge a couple times a month. When I take a month off, all I want to do is talk about it a lot, and I have no explanation for that. Whatever. I'll sort that all out in therapy one day. For now, I want to ask you to do a few things for me. First is follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement. Second, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it. Third, review me on that platform and tell your friends about the show. Finally, please support my amazing sponsors who make the show happen. They are Evo, Stanley, Spy Optic, 686, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.